Hello, students. This video is part of the October 29th remote session in which we are learning all about network analytics. Network analytics, as we talked about previously, is all about the rules of the road, right? Using traditionally roads, but any line-based network, and actually designing something in a way that you can measure the shortest route between 2 points on that road network, right? Or how far you could travel on that road network in sort of 5 minutes or sort of a mile. So it's similar to the nears and the buffer-like tools we've learned, but the difference is that it follows actual sort of roads or actual sort of networks rather than just letting you move, kind of in any direction you want it at sort of any speed. When we paused last video, we were here at the page called Evaluators. Now, I had mentioned that ArcGIS thinks it's sort of helping you here, but it's not. And here's what I mean by that. If I double click on minutes, you will not be able to know what this means. I will explain to you in a minute when we create our own evaluators what it means. But what this is saying is that when I'm moving from one direction on the road, I want you to just take the value from the field named minutes. And that sounds right? There is actually a field called minutes in the data that I'll show you in a few minutes. That sounded strange. There is a field called minutes that I'll show you soon. That field in the data, if you look at it in the attribute table, has only the value 0 in it. So I purposely did that in this data set. And I did it, because maybe one day I'd want to store how many minutes I think it would take to traverse each road segment. And if I ever did that, then yes, I would have the data to tell me sort of the time it takes for each road. But right now it's 0 for every field. So if you did this, if you kept this as your evaluator and tried to measure it later, you'd literally be telling this tool that it costs 0 minutes to travel on every road. So every direction would be the same and you'd never get anywhere. What I'd like you to do, because not all of these are bad, one way is actually good and length is good. I'd like you to come to cost and hit remove, come to minutes and hit remove, and come to road class and hit remove. Now I will return to length and I will return to one way in a moment. But to learn what an evaluator is, we are going to create one on our own. So let's come on up here to add and walk through evaluators. Now, evaluators, as I mentioned, the purpose of these is to connect to either some constant value or more regularly to information stored on a field that tells the tool something about how to traverse that road segment. And there's 4 main types of evaluators. We will only focus really on 2, on cost and restriction. Cost is the most common one. Cost literally means what does it, quote unquote, cost to travel on this road? What is the payment in terms of distance, right? How many feet do you accumulate on this section? How many minutes, how many seconds, how many calories burned, how many lost opportunity costs that you're not riding along sort of a greenway. It's anything where each road segment would have a different amount so that when you add up everything and I'm evaluating how to get from point A to point B, the tool will iteratively be evaluating each road segment and saying, all right, this road segment took me 10 feet. If I take a left, I've got to add 20 feet. If I take a right, I've got to add 15. But then after that right, I've got to take maybe another right, which is 30. So I'll go the left because the next left after that is only 5. Right? It keeps adding and accumulating this cost over time. And that's what helps us pick the shortest route, the quickest route, the route that avoids crime the most, the route that burns the most calories, whatever we determine our cost might be. Descriptor is really just something to know about a road that maybe helps modify a cost or a restriction. Like this is 2-lane highways or sort of this road has gravel. And maybe we build something in with the descriptor that any road that's gravel or sand, your speed reduces by sort of X. Restriction is just as it sounds, something that says you can or cannot go on this road. And typically the restrictor that's used most commonly is the one-way. That's the one we'll do here. And then hierarchy is, gosh, I'm sure they still do this in Google Maps. I just haven't found it. But back in the long ago, when I was just young and spry, there used to be a program called MapQuest, which perhaps some of you still know of, but it's kind of a shadow of itself. But you used to have this ability on there. You could quickly say like avoid highways, and it would show you the same route without going on a highway. That's hierarchy. It lets you build like preference for the roads. So if, regardless of time or distance, you always want to make sure that highways are deprioritized or sort of small streets are deprioritized or whatever, you can sort of link them. But all we care about here is cost and restriction. So let's start with cost, and we are going to create our own that is length, and we're going to call it our length, or let's call it distance. Okay? It's going to do roughly the same thing that the field length did, except we're going to build it ourselves. We, at this point, need to tell it what distance is going to be. Well, I know because our data is projected in feet and because what I've calculated in our data set is in feet, that feet is going to be the correct response here. So I'll say the data type will be feet, and we're going to be looking for fields that are a double, so we'll say double. Distance, cost, feet, double. Now, this thing pops up, and what that means is, hey, I get you, but I don't have enough information to run. You got to sort of tell me what you want. And so let's double click it and actually open the evaluator window. This is what we saw earlier, and I told you I'd explain. Now, remember that roads are built in such a way that there are two directions, right? You can travel one way on a road, or you could travel another. You could travel from to or to from. What does that actually mean? Well, it's the way that they're digitized on the computer. And I think, and don't quote me, but I think they digitize from top left to bottom right. So from, right, would be anything that is that way. So like this little road segment down here, right? That would be the sort of from to, right? Because from a top to bottom standpoint or a left to right, that would be from to. Whereas to from would be from a bottom right corner up to top left. So anything where you would be heading north or anything where you would be heading west. And the reason it's built like that, and this is going to become certainly apparent when I show you the one way, but it's built like that because you may actually generate a different cost depending on the direction you're going on a road. And the most common example of that, which we won't do together, but is something I'm going to challenge you guys later in the semester to try to model on your own, would be elevation. What if you incorporated the slope of a road into your field? And if you were going in one direction, you'd be going uphill, and it would cost, more energy, greater time, but the same distance. And in others, you'd be going downhill, in which case it would be sort of less energy and sort of less time. But for now, these are going to be largely the same, so we're just going to duplicate them for each. And type is where you sort of pick what's it going to be. And, we're largely going to be doing field or constant. You'll probably never do constant function or script. Constant is if you just want to give each road the same distance. It's fine. But really what we're probably going to do is field. We're going to take some information from a field and use it to evaluate our data. So let's pick field. And you have two options here. You can either, like I'll show you for the next one, create a field calculation, or you can just literally take a value from a field. And fortunately, there's something I preloaded for you that you can Google and check out, or not Google, you can open your attribute table and check out that says length, and it is just the length in feet of each road. And this is the simplest cost, distance, right? Each road taxes you how long it is. And over time, you accumulate the total length, right? So when we use this as a cost to model, we will be measuring the minimum distance. Emulate the same thing, field length, bing, bada, boom, hit apply. And there we go. We've got our distance. It's a cost, it's feet, and it's a double. Let's add another one that would be minutes. Now, I told you before I had a field in there called minutes, but it's a lie. We're actually going to use other information to calculate this. We're actually going to use sort of the speed limit as a way to assume how long it would take to drive on each road. So let's call it minutes. hopefully you should have deleted the existing minutes one already. If that's still there, you can call it minutes 2 or, minutes Shay or sort of whatever, something to remind you that it's different. It's a cost, right? It's going to be something taxed for us to go on the road, something we accumulate. We accumulate time. We accumulate minutes. The units are going to be in minutes, and double is what we'll keep. We got to double click on it because there is no evaluation, or rather there is. It thinks it's being helpful. Hey, I did my thing. I found your minutes. I'm doing good for you, aren't I? Well, thank you, ArcGIS, but not quite today, right? Again, as we discussed earlier, if you open the attribute table, you will see minutes actually has a value of 0, so this is not right. We don't actually have minutes stored in the attribute. You could calculate, everything I'm about to show you right here, you could field calculate, right-click the minutes field and field calculate it there and store it, and then just do this. But I actually want to use this as an opportunity to show you this cool thing called the evaluator properties. This is where you can create a script on the fly. This is the same window you would likely see if we were doing blanking out here for a second. Pro, except VBScript is no longer an option in Pro, it's just sort of Python. But all you need to do is sort of follow me here, and the only real difference you need to know between VBScript and Python is, notice that any field I select here, I'm just going to grab a random field called lanes. If I double click it, it's got brackets. If I click length, it's got brackets. Right? Python had exclamation points on either side of the name, but it's the same thing. Just tell me the value that's in each field. So I know I have a field called speed limit. It's also stored here in limit 2. That field, limit 2 or speed limit, tells me sort of how fast I can go in miles per hour. Well, if I want to calculate minutes, I have to convert, right, miles per hour to feet per minute, and then I have to divide that by the length to find out the time. And so that's what you'll do. You'll literally say, hey, the length, however long you are, divide that by 88 times the speed limit. Why 88? Well, you can Google it if you want, or you can do the math on your own on Excel spreadsheet, but this is the conversion factor to convert 1 mile per hour into feet per minute. You times it by sort of 88. That's how you do miles per hour to feet per minute right here. So the length divided by 88 times the speed limit will give you your time in minutes. Now I'm going to just copy this and hit OK. And just load literally the same thing in the other direction. And there we go. And I'll go right back. Those who need to sort of pause on this for a second. Length divided by 88 times limit 2, or speed limit. They're the same information. And now I have 2 different costs I can model. When we get to this in a few steps, I can actually now model how fast something takes and how long it takes. And I'll notice that the responses will be a little different for each, as they should be, right? Distance and time are not always correlated. The last thing I'm going to ask you to do is an abstract one. And I'm going to call it crime cost. It's going to be a cost, but the units are unknown. It's not going to be any real unit. It's some we're making up right here. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to double click on crime cost. I want you to pick field. And in value, I want you to sort of add another field. And here's literally what you're going to do. I loaded something earlier called C-score. I want you literally to say C-score times length. What is this? Well, this is a value I've given each road depending on the level of crime it passes through. The heaviest gets a 5, the lightest get a 1. So what am I doing here? Nothing really. I'm just saying, hey, however long you are, make yourself seem 5 times longer if you're in an intense area of crime. Make yourself the same distance as you normally are if you're in light crime. I would never use the output of this to say how long it actually takes, because this is totally abstract. But what it's going to do by weighting where you pass through based on the intensity of crime, you'll see when we run it, it's going to actually deprioritize passing through areas where there is crime to pass through areas where there is not. So for now, just copy, hit OK. Same thing, make it a field. Come on into the expression, paste it, hit OK. We're good to go. Now, this is the nice thing that desktop does for you. This is the one thing it really helps. If your data has one-way information loaded into it, like we do have a field called one-way, ArcGIS Desktop is actually pre-programmed to recognize it and to appropriately convert it into the script that you need for this to run. This will not be the case for those of you that watch the Pro video after this. So what I do here, we're going to need to copy and paste in Pro, and it's sort of one of the reasons that I find the Pro a little less user-friendly, a little more frustrating. I want you to just double-click it now, the restriction, and I want you to sort of see it's also a field with an expression. And I could click on that and actually load the expression, and holy crap, what is this saying? This looks crazy. Well, let me talk you through. Pre-logic code is stuff that you want to run before you actually post a value. And here's what this is actually saying. It's saying, as a rule, the variable restricted is going to be false, meaning it's not one way. However, what it's going to say is that if you find instances where the field one way has the value no, to, from, or to, I want you to change that to 2. That may sound like gobbledygook to you, but look, we're actually on the from to direction. So what this is saying is, like, as a base, it's not restricted, right? It's not one way, false. However, if the value you find in that field is to, from, or to, then yes, you want to be one way. And then it takes on that value. If this confuses you, don't worry about it. 9 times out of 10, one-way data will be loaded correctly in the data you receive. And like I said, if you create this in ArcGIS Desktop, it'll automatically sort of populate for you. And if it doesn't, you can always copy this script and update it with whatever your data says in the one-way column. And notice if I do the same thing on the to, from, it's the same thing. Hey, as a rule, I am not restricted. You can pass through me. However, if you look at my information in one way, if I am no or from to or from, then yeah, I am restricted. Because if you're trying to go to the to from direction, right, this way, but I'm saying I'm a one way from to, I'm telling you I can only travel on me the opposite direction, and therefore you wouldn't want to use me. I'm a restriction. And that's all you need. We are now set up to be able to run this. Let's hit next. No need to set up these sort of travel modes. This is a more sort of advanced topic that I don't want to mess with. We're good to go with this now. Hit next. Do you want to establish driving directions? This is a cute little thing. You can hit yes just for the hell of it and hit next and then hit finish. And yeah, let's build it. So it's going to build the network data set, do-do-do-do-do-do, blah-blah-blah-blah-blah. It's going to go through all these steps. You can sort of add the feature classes here if you want. These are the junctions where things meet. This is the road. These are the edges. But we're going to be processing everything we just ran in ArcGIS Pro. This is going to be the last time that we were here. But that data set that we created that you can now see here in catalog, right, has this sort of graph paper with the line through it. We're going to be able to load that into ArcGIS Pro. And use that to actually run analyses like what's the quickest way to get between point A and point B, how far could I actually walk or go in 5 minutes or sort of in 500 feet if I had to follow the roads. So those who followed along on this, you have your network data set, you are good to go. If you want to learn how to build one in Pro, that's what I'll do for the next video. But outside that, we will pick up in sort of 2 videos with actually running the analytics in ArcGIS Pro.